Testing 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and hope we're live. Brandon, this bit will be cut. By the way, if anybody's listening in, we're literally having a sort of minute or two before we start. So, Brandon, would you like to say, you're going to do the improv bit, Brandon? So just for a minute, just talk.
Good. Well, we are in fact talking about teams, which I think is, on one hand, I would say if anyone has a strong opinion on the challenges facing teams right now, we're being told what it is by numerous people doing very quality research, and it seems that the answers aren't so dissimilar.
Yeah.
So I'd be very curious what it is people are thinking on, but it's also worth keeping in mind why this is so important. So we're going to take a deep dive into this, but Michael, cast a broad net. When we think about the issue of leading teams, being remote, cross-functional, what comes to you?
Some experiences I have with normal teams, with some of my clients with normal teams. when you have cross-functional, where the power is not, people aren't clear of who is powerful and who isn't, and when you have it across country, it sort of doubles it 10 times it. 10 amps the challenges. And when a team is face to face, they can't get things right, then a virtual team is even more interesting.
Yes, it seems almost like when we talk about being a parent, going from 2 children to 3 children, the math just completely goes out the window. The same is true of the complexities when you add remoteness or cross-functionality. There's a weird multiplying effect that makes things even worse.
Okay, I think we're live, so I'm going to say thank you very much for anybody that's joined in. I'm going to go through the agenda. We're going to introduce Brandon. I'm going to say a little bit about myself, and then we're going to go straight into it. We're not taking questions, but if anybody puts any questions in the chat, we do guarantee we'll answer them, and we are very interested to find out what questions you might have. But let me run through the agenda so you've got a sort of view of where we're going. You've got the menu of what we're going through. So it's brief introductions. Then because we both think this is important, that what we're talking about is really important these days, and managing and running teams, whether it's you're a CEO at the C-suite or throughout the company, it is more challenging than most people think. But we're going to come on to that. Some definitions: what are cross-functional teams? What are remote teams? Why do people have them? Are they going to grow? Then we're going to go back to what are the fundamentals of team management. Whatever team you've got, what are the fundamentals? Because in my coaching practice, I find some people are brilliant and some people are brilliantly other than brilliant. We'll then look at Marshall's team building process, particularly with regard to hybrid teams, because I actually think it's not necessarily easy, but it is, if you can do it, it is very safe in that you're almost guaranteed results. It's sort of, if you have the courage to do it and do it properly, you will get the results that you want at the end of it. We'll look at his team process, we'll look at the benefits of it, and then we'll summarize, and then any call to action. So that's me talking too much in one go for a start. So let's do some introductions. So I'm really pleased to have Brandon here. Brandon is CEO of Marshall Goldsmith's organization. It's highly unlikely, Brandon, but can you just say a little bit about Marshall? 2-3 minutes, just in case people don't know. Unlikely situation, people don't quite know how much of influence he's had, and then talk a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, Marshall Goldsmith has been named time and again the world's top leadership coach, top leadership thinker, and numerous other things. He's a thought leader. He's got 4 New York Times best-selling books, 2 of which are on Amazon's top 100 books to read in a lifetime, of which there's only 2 authors with 2 books, Marshall being one of them. He's rated as one of the top leadership thinkers, one of the top business thinkers, and has programs that have been rated consistently as the #1 coach training program for executive coaches. My role in all of this is I'm the CEO of Stakeholder Center Coaching, which means I'm overseeing a great deal of the training for coaches, as well as the coaching being done in organizations. And what we focus on is working with executives who want to be recognized as measurably more effective leaders by key people in their team in 12 months or less. And that's what we'll look at today, how this actually applies to leadership, especially in the age of remote as hybrid and as well as cross-functional teams.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Just to remind everybody who I am, I'm Michael. I do one-to-one NLP training around the world, and I'm also a Marshall Goldsmith coach. And I have to say, I brought a lot of Marshall stuff into my NLP stuff simply because it works. If you can get people to do it, if you can get people to buy into the process, it is full of really, really good processes. So that's what we can do. So let's have a look at, excuse me, as I look down at my notes. What's important about what we're talking about? Brandon, what's important about what we're talking about? Why might people want to listen?
Yeah, I happen to have some opinions on this topic, Michael. Of course, I invite all of you, keep in mind, Michael and I have a very well-informed opinion, but no one or two individuals have a fully informed opinion. So I invite you to share with us, what is it that you see that makes this important now? But where my mind goes with this, Michael, is that the single biggest gap that we're seeing in organizations is not about competence, it's about connection.
Right.
We're seeing a people issue, and we see this as people work harder, but they're not necessarily working better together. I think the thing that remote and hybrid work gave us in abundance is flexibility. But at the same time, it has greatly fractured what we're able to see in others, what we're able to feel from our leaders. And this comes out in the research, Michael. Yeah. I don't want to deep dive too quick, so let me kick the ball back to you. In your mind, what is it that makes this so important now and urgent that our audience is listening to?
The reason I'm particularly keen on this is in my NLP business, I work with a number of senior execs or people in different levels of the organizations or startups and all this sort of thing. And I notice how teams, it's as though nobody's taught people how to run teams. It's sort of everybody's got their head down and running a team is not necessarily easy if we define running a team as making sure that the individuals get something out of it, that the team itself produces the right results for the organization. This is non-trivial, and it doesn't happen by accident. And I have a number of clients who do not realize it doesn't happen by accident and then get surprised when it's not quite working the way they thought. I know I'm joking about it, but it just hit me in the face too many times. And when it's a mess, sorting it out isn't always the easiest thing because you've got politics and egos and all that sort of thing. However, the reason I think it's particularly important is because of the whole AI stuff. A number of my clients are either being the catalyst of putting AI into companies, or they're involved in it for themselves. And the reality is, in my view, people are only going to get the best view of AI if the senior teams work really well together, because they do have to make some really challenging decisions. Mm-hmm. And the challenging decisions, you need to make a good challenging decision, you need the right information and then the courage to decide based on what your criteria are. But if you have a dysfunctional team where people are playing games with each other and looking after their silos, the right decisions won't make. And I come back to this thing, you can't automate a mess. Well, you can automate a mess, but you just get an amplified mess. And I've been through it too many times, and you create a really bad working environment, but people are not going to survive unless they get it right, in my view.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you've nailed a few things really well on the head, Michael. And I think the overarching theme here is you've got to have the right people delivering the right performance, but they need to get something out of it. And what's
Yeah.
showing up in the data, a recent a recent Gartner study showed less than half of employees nowadays report understanding how their work connects to the larger company objectives. They're not going to get anything out of work under these circumstances. We see Microsoft's work trend index. We see 60% of employees are reporting feeling invisible to leadership when they have any number of remote hours. They're feeling invisible and unseen. And the flip side of that is, I believe it was 7 out of 10 leaders, about 70% of leaders are also reporting not being able to maintain cohesion within their team. So we see the downstream impact and we see the size and scope of this. I would be curious if you think that we're trending in the right direction. Like, are we improving this, or are we
My
expecting
view
to
is
get
we're
worse?
trending in the wrong direction simply because of the pressures to cut costs, put in new systems. It's like even going to remote teams and hybrid teams makes it harder.
Mhm.
If you have people around the country, which you may want, if you want the very best people, you
Mhm.
may not have them in your locality. So you want access to the very best people, but that actually makes it harder. And I think, very few people have sat down and said, how do we manage this lot? Wrong words, but how do we manage this lot that works, that works for the individual, works for the team, and works for the company?
Mhm.
And that again is why I like Marshall's thing, because that is the view. It's people need to benefit themselves, the teams need to work and they need to add value, but it all needs to help the company and the final shareholders.
Mhm.
So, but nobody sort of planned it like that.
Mhm.
It's sort of anyway. You get what I mean.
I do. You know what frightens me, Michael, was
Yeah.
something you said that something to the effect of managers not sure what they're doing is working,
Mm.
and sort of the latency between putting something in place and finding out if it works. That's what the stakeholder centered coaching model offers: reduced uncertainty. It's leaders more and more aren't looking to maximize leadership, they're looking to decatastrophize the solutions they're putting in place. And as we look at the scope, as we look at the intensity of the problem, not knowing what you're doing or not knowing if what you're doing is going to work is a high risk level, a pretty high risk level to enter, I'd say.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Let's look at what, even if it's in a theoretical basis, for any team, what are the core fundamentals for a team to work? And when we were talking about this before, you came up with 3 words: clarity, consistency, and connection. Can you spend a little bit of time? Because I'd like to go into this in a little bit more detail, because I think we really need to start with the basics. What are the absolutely important things? So
Mhm.
talk about clarity, consistency, and connection.
Yeah, and the big message is this is not a comprehensive list. I think it's safe to say that this is a good starting spot to say, let's do an analysis and see how we're doing.
Yeah.
Clarity is a matter of people. People know what matters. They have clear priorities. Here's what you're working on. Here's the here's the interplay between things. Here's the shared vision, which everything links into. But also here's the incentive. Here's what it means for you. I think Alan Mulally
Yeah.
perfected this with his profitable growth for all. But that's what clarity. When we talk about clarity, everyone knows where they're going and their role in it. Consistency. This comes back to, let's look at David Rock's SCARF model. It's pretty clear people want a degree of certainty moving forward, and uncertainty
In
is
uncertain times.
yeah,
Yeah. No, absolutely.
unprecedented even.
Absolutely.
And we see people need to know what to expect, and there's some wonderful case studies here. Two that just pop to mind is shipping times and phone service with organizations. When an organization says, hey, we'll have your product to you in 5 days, and they deliver in 2, you're delighted. Next time you order, they deliver in 2 year delight. And next time it's 4 days, you're thinking, what are these guys doing?
Yeah,
But they're
yeah.
still within spec. And within spec is not what determines quality with leadership. It's within expectation. And the same is true of answering phones. How many companies have a protocol? Here's when you can answer. Don't answer earlier or later. People want to know what to expect. And the third thing is connection. This is actually a key challenge for remote work. People need to not just feel that they are there and contributing. They need to feel seen. They need to feel integrated. And a lot of this comes down to base level needs of people. Now, this is not a comprehensive list. What would you put on yours, Michael?
Okay, well, I've actually got a So, but I go for the first one because actually over the years, I've always asked a number of my senior clients, what is the most important thing in leadership and teams? And the consistent answer I get back, which is not unlike what you said, is people have got to have clear goals and expectations. And if that's fudged or it's not clear, you have a recipe for disaster because you can't really manage it. So everybody's got to know whether they like it or not. Everybody's got to know what their responsibility is and where they fit into the machine. Then maintain open communications. And if it starts getting a little bit chaotic and people are fighting for power, etc., then it's very hard to have open communications. But as you said, if you don't have open communications, nobody's really sure what the boss wants or what the boss's boss wants or where the company is going in, and it changes every 5 minutes. So, and that just doesn't work. Well, sorry, it does work, but it doesn't help. Provide regular feedback, and that's the good stuff and the less good stuff. Because again, one of the things that my view is in managing teams, you have to manage out the people that don't fit. I'm saying that doesn't sound politically correct, but my view is 1 or 2 bad apples can ruin a team. And again, I'm not saying it in the right way, but you have to spot it, because where it breaks down is where people pretend to be good players, but they're not. If they don't pretend, it doesn't matter. You know what they are and you can deal with them. But it's the ones that fake it, that they pretend to do all the right things, but secretly they have other plans, and it can demotivate everybody else in the team. And they are quite dangerous. It comes from the prisoner's dilemma thing, which I quite like for some time ago. We can let certain bad performance go, but others, when it's destructive to everybody else, we have to stamp on. Feedback, foster collaboration, which is the same sort of thing. Managing time zones is obviously not a problem if you've got everybody in the same group, but you have to be aware of it if you're managing a team. And create a supportive environment. This whole thing of creating a safe environment in a dangerous world is non-trivial. But people, whatever you say, if there's chaos, it's hard to work long-term in chaos. So that again is why I quite like Marshall's thing, because the temptation is for all these things to get lost, unless you've got a really good manager and a strong manager, not a manager that's trying to fake it, that's trying to look good to his bosses, but doesn't really know the basics. And that's why I quite like Marshall's stuff, because it's basic good practice. Or take the Ray Dalio thing, it's good principles.
Mm-hmm. Out of curiosity, if you were to float 1 or 2 of these to the top and say, this is really the big challenge or the most ubiquitous, what would you point at?
I would say it is everybody knows what they're doing, but there is honest communication. There is honest communication, but for that to be meaningful, everybody has to be pointing in a similar direction. So it goes back to what is leadership about? And again, we could have an interesting one on this, because my top 2 things on leadership are creating a shared vision, creating the right, creating the right vision and getting buy-in to it. And then it's something about maintaining the right culture. Because again, this joke about does culture beat strategy? Well, I'm an ex-strategy man, so I tend to like strategy. But the companies where I've messed up in, when I've gone into a company, it just hasn't worked. Now, it's me being bad, but it's because I misread the culture. And so the culture thing is sort of, you don't see what's around you all the time. So my top two would be, my top two is create the right vision, get buy-in to, ensure you have buy-in to it, and work on getting the culture right. And that again starts at the top, because people will take the person at the top as a role model. So let me be mean and throw the question back at you, because what do you think is the most important?
Again, let's invite the audience. If you have strong, well, you should have strong opinions. If you're a professional coach, you should have an opinion on this, and it should come quite naturally. So follow that instinct. Drop it in the chat. Tell us, what you would put in. For me, I don't know if I'm cheating, but to me, it all comes down to what you said earlier. Everyone knows what they're doing, and part of that is getting buy-in to that vision.
Yeah.
Part of that is the feedback on results, but also the feedback on behavior. It's not enough to say, here's your numbers, Michael. I also say, here's your numbers, and here's what I've experienced working with you over the last quarter. Here's what we could do to make it better. What's your experience of me been? And so much of this comes down to communication, managing time zones. Here's what's easy for me and what's not. It's taking into consideration people's personal life, the aspect of collaboration. To me, it all comes down to, is your team willing to share, like speak, and are they willing to listen? And I think so much of that is cooked into how you and I both approach coaching.
And I agree. And of course, it then goes back to the fundamental question, do you need a team? Or why do we all need teams? And my view in life, actually, if we're going through a life that's going to be uncertain, from an individual's point of view, having our own teams of friends, family, or whatever is really important, because that becomes a way of survive. That becomes a way of almost thriving, however difficult the situation becomes. Okay, you go.
Well, I'm just being curious here. Is there anyone who's listening that might be thinking, I could actually do without a team? Maybe I'm not even in a team now. Is there anybody who isn't in a team? Anyone who doesn't, have family or a friend group? Is it safe to say that everybody listening to this, for better or for worse, is deeply invested and integrated in a team somewhere, and therefore can benefit from applying what they hear today?
I think I'd be very interested if people comment. There is no problem people working alone, but they still need support. You still need a support network. And that's where it gets very interesting, where I think in the West, the major use now of the AIs is as a mate and a friend.
Yeah.
So that almost answers your question. A lot of people don't have a community. Should we call it a community? A lot of people don't have a community, and that's where it gets that becomes really interesting as far as some of the AIs go. Because I remember whether it was a joke or a serious comment, that when ChatGPT changed to version 5, a lot of people who had got too close to it got a real shock, because it initially became less friendly, and they thought they were being chucked by their AI. We won't go down this route, but it's an interesting thing. So yes, and there's nothing wrong with people working alone. Sorry, don't get me wrong. I don't think there's anything at all wrong with people working alone, but you can't. In a changing world, you have to learn, and you cannot learn without input. Getting isolated, and that includes a CEO, actually. Even at the top, you can get isolated because people may not want to tell you the truth anymore, and that becomes exceptionally dangerous. Well, it's okay until you find out. It's fun until the bubble is burst. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to move on. We're now going to look at the top level of the Marshall process, okay, particularly as far as hybrid and remote teams. But again, it's good for leadership and it's good for teams. Now, I'm going to throw the first thing at you, because you reminded me when we were doing this of the top level process of ask, listen, thank, think, respond, change, follow up. Just so everybody's got that. Ask, listen, thank, think, respond, change, follow up. Just tell people a bit more about it.
Yeah, I'll paste it from kind of the high level, and we can jump in and go deep wherever you'd like. This process of being recognized as a measurably more effective leader is obscenely simple, and it boils down to these 7 single word steps. Ask people who are important to you. Say, I want to be better at blank. What could I do to show you that I'm better at this? Number 2, listen. Take some notes, be quiet, and respect the fact that they're sharing with you, and then thank the response. What they shared is a gift. All you have to do is say thank you.
Yeah. And thank them. And this, I find, this was real. Sorry, I found this as a real challenge as a coach, because as part of my coaching, I'll just stop and say to my clients, time out. How are you feeling? What are you thinking? Just because I want them to check in with where they are at this exact moment in time with 100% honesty. In theory, it's an easy question. But when I started, I realized I had to be able to take them saying, that was a waste of time. And although it sounds trivial, it wasn't that easy for me to be okay with what anybody said and thank them for saying it. Because if I don't create a space where people can be honest about what they say, we don't learn. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying it's non-trivial. All I'm saying is it's non-trivial. I'm now okay with it within constraints.
It's hard.
It took time.
Mm-hmm.
So please continue.
So we're going to ask for input. We're going to listen and say thank you, regardless of what they've said. And what's key here, great idea.
Yeah.
That's a judgment. Because if I say to you, great idea, and the next person, I love that, and next person, I say, huh, what have I said? I'm thanking them more than you. Ask, listen, think. Think. Sit down and think about the suggestions you got. You don't have to do them all. This wasn't a promise. It's not an agreement. It's, here's some things that I could do. So turn that would-do list into a could-do list, into a should-do list. What are the things that you're willing to take action on, and use this as a plan? Respond by sharing the plan. Yeah.
I think this is so important. And I focus it quite a lot in my coaching now. It's creating that space between listening to an idea and deciding what you're going to do with it. When you listen, you want to get the best ideas for the person. So you don't want to say no, you don't want to criticize it. You want to get the best ideas, and almost it's best not to react at all. Thank you is a very good way of doing it, because you're not appreciating for the quality of what they're saying. You're appreciating them for making the effort of having the courage to express what they really feel or think. And I think, and that's worthy of thanks. Whatever it is, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it's worthy of thanks. But make the real decision elsewhere when you've got different opinions, because it's just like decision-making is a fascinating subject, but decision-making starts with getting accurate information. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to color any information you get from people because of your biases. You want to capture it as purely as possible and then consider it later. So I think this listen ask thing, it sounds simple, but it's not.
Can I give you my cheeky way of getting my reps in?
Yes.
So the frame here is that saying thank you, regardless of the input, is tough. I realize that this is we're so reactive.
Yeah.
We so quickly want to show appreciation by praising the suggestion. Here's what I did that helped me get in my reps and build the habit is in my car. Beep, beep, beep. The car in front of you is stopping.
Yeah.
Thank you. Beep, beep. Make sure to put your seatbelt on. Thank you. Every time my car tells me anything, I get really good by just saying thank you. So if I'm on the phone with an assistant or a partner, I feel so bad because, in an hour-long journey, a dozen times they're going to hear, thank you, car. I appreciate it. But this is the kind of habit you have to build as a leader. Otherwise, you are communicating your input's not important.
Yeah.
I told you I want to hear it, but actually I didn't. I wanted to hear something different.
Okay, please continue.
Good. So we have ask, listen, thank, think, respond. And then number 6 is change. Do the work. You told people you're going to do it. Now do it. Most important, number 7 is follow up. Go back again and say, hey, Michael, last month I asked you, how could I be a better blank? You shared this. Have you noticed any difference? Anything that you need more of or less of? Anything I should start doing or stop doing? And this becomes cyclical. This is a process I can run ad nauseum, ad infinitum, and I can measure it by checking with the people around me on a -3 to +3 scale. What changes have you seen in my leadership effectiveness? So this is the high level. Ask people what they need to see, listen and thank the suggestions, think and respond by creating a plan and sharing it, and then do the work and follow up with people.
And I'm going to add a bit to that. Because my view of what we're talking about before, because what's it important? Because they may have made a suggestion, but later on you may have decided that's not the suggestion I'm going to follow this month. But it's still important you go back to them and say, look, I really appreciate what you said. It wasn't right for me this time round because I chose to do this. But it's in the bank of things I might want to do. So I don't want to discourage you from saying new things because it doesn't get thrown away. It gets held on. But last month I decided to do this. But how was I?
Yeah.
And it requires courage. It requires courage to listen. But it has a tremendous effect. It's funny. One of the other things I've noticed in my coaching is sometimes just listening to people, particularly if it's in a useful direction, is enough for them to change. Listening is very powerful. In fact, again, this is a side thing. Some people actually don't like to be listened to. Let me play this one back at you for a bit of humor. Okay.
Say more.
Because if you listen to people, they have to listen to themselves. And if they listen to themselves, they may suddenly find that they think themselves they're talking a load of rubbish. But if they're arguing with somebody, they don't worry about it because their job is to argue. But if they're talking and somebody's acknowledging it and noticing it, they, as I say, they're forced to listen to themselves, which is a very fascinating thing. Sometimes just listening to people will help them change. Just a thought.
It's not something I've considered. Thank you for that. Oh, actually, by the way, did you hear the judgment there? It's not something I've considered. It must be. If it's a good idea, I would have considered it, Michael. Yeah, but thank you anyway. What a dumb thing to say. Thank you for the insight, Michael. This is it. It's so hard to just say.
No, it is.
Thank
and
you.
As I say, I smile through all the things I haven't yet got right. And I'm working with people, I actually say, look, we're going through stuff that I have seen have worked, but I'm not telling you what to do because I know I didn't do it 90% of the time myself. It's your choice. This is what I see works. Let's not get too head up because I've done dafter things than you have.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah. Is there anything more you want to say about the Ask Link, that cycle?
If I were to add anything else, I would say this isn't a leadership. This skill is not limited to leadership.
Yeah.
This is a marital skill. This is a parenting skill. You want to know who gives good feed forward? 5-year-olds. Ask kids, what can I do to be a better parent? What could I do to be a better uncle, aunt, teacher, neighbor, friend? You will be shocked what comes up. But this is a human skill to just ask, listen, think, respond, change, follow up.
And the important thing, it's a growth skill. It's like going down the gym. It may not be comfortable. It may be sometimes quite painful, but if you were to do it on an ongoing basis, you will rise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think is the way I think I'd sort of put it. It is like going down the gym. You can think about going down to the gym. You can talk about going down to the gym, but it doesn't tend to make you stronger.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do it. And doing it isn't necessarily easy, but a bit like meditation. If you do it over time, you get much better. If you don't do it, you may get better, but it's random. Okay, let's move on from this because again, it's we sort of can be sounding a bit theoretical and a bit floaty.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about if you wanted to actually put this into an organization, what are some of the steps you would take that turns our great ideas into something that's practical and usable, and we can almost so people that do it can transfer the benefits and get the benefits themselves. So I'm going to go through my list. I would like to spend a bit of time on these. So I'm going to throw through each stages, because if you wanted to implement Marshall's process in your organization and your team, these are the things you sort of have to do. There's not too much, but you sort of have to do. You have to do them, and some of them are surprisingly tricky. But it's like growth. I don't. I always like. Sorry, I hate it, but I like it. Ray Dalio's pain plus reflection equals growth. And when I talk to customers about it, they look as though they're going to hit me. But it sort of tends to be true. So let's go through. First one: assess team dynamics. Confidentially rate current and desired teamwork, and in that too. So there's one bit I quite like is where you actually ask the team how they think they're performing as a team, and do they genuinely think life would be better for themselves and the team and the company if they work together better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because in the end, change comes from within. My view is change comes within. The environment affects us a lot, but if we don't want to play, we don't play. So talk to me about how you, at the start of this sort of process, how would you actually go about accessing the team dynamics?
Great. There are a myriad of ways to go about this with all different levels of price points. I prefer the fast, easy, and free way because they all lead to the same place. I'm going to ask two questions. Number one, on a 1 to 10 scale, how effectively are we working as a team right now? I'm going to collect those numbers, just scribble it on a sheet of paper, pass it over, get me a number. And question two is, in order to achieve our objectives, create a great place to work, etc., 1 to 10, how effective do we need to be working as a team? And therein lies your gap. So this is the first step. Assess your team dynamics with these two simple questions. You don't need a big, heavy 360, and you don't need to send out big engagement surveys.
Cool. No, I go with simple, because simple is often harder, but it's harder because it's more honest. Okay, identify key behaviors. Suggest 2 actionable behaviors to close the gap. Talk a little bit more about that.
In my opinion, feed forward is the most potent tool here.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to say, hey, let's go for big, heavy feedback. Nobody wakes up in the morning psyched about getting a 360 report. Even the best leaders know there's something in there they're not going to be excited to read. So we use feed forward. If I'm working with a team, we'll probably do start, stop, continue. This is, what do we need to start doing as a team to close this gap in our team dynamics? What are things we need to stop doing? What are things that we can continue doing? Of course, another way to ask this at an individual level is, what can we do more of, less of, start doing, stop doing? And this gives you everything. People will tell you. I'll tell you what, the conversations that come out in your 360, people are already having at the water cooler. If you ask them, they will tell you, and you'll save yourself the huge headache of doing more robust 360s. Again, they all lead to the same place.
Okay, and just remind me of this in the team building thing. The team will work on something for themselves as an individual, so they get some benefit out of it personally. They will work on 1 or 2 things that, if the whole team work on these, it will improve the team. but also those things have to be aligned with what the company wants, or what the boss is, and the boss's boss thinks is useful for the team. Is that a good way of put it, or would you put it a different way? Because it's getting alignment. And so I'm saying this because it was so funny when I was actually trained in this with your guys in the States. While we were going through this process, we were a team, and it was, let's facilitate a team goal that we all agree with. It was so funny because somebody, not a Marshall person, got up and said, I'm going to facilitate this. And the moment they said it, everybody was against them. It was so getting the team to agree genuinely what are the one or two things they would work on, and then getting it agreed by the boss and the boss's boss is a incredibly useful but non-trivial process, because it forces everybody to communicate. So that's just my take. So some of the simple things we're talking about, they sound stupidly simple. Why don't people do them? Because they require work and they require a bit of courage.
Well, and the flip side of that is true too, Michael. Why is no one proposing ultra simple, free to run solutions to this? Because they can't sell it. We're not here to sell anyone a program. You can do everything we talk about today for free. You don't need to buy anything. You don't need to go read any books. Ask people what you can do to get better. Show them, ask them if they saw and what else they need next. So as he's saying, this is non-trivial, but it is very useful to look at that feed forward, pull out the key behavioral themes for the team, democratize the decision, and then ask, what about you as an individual? What part of contributing to this goal do you also want to play? And you've got a rich, thick set of data from your feed forward that you can use to set that behavioral action plan.
Yeah, great. And I'm going to emphasize too that we do things because we get something out of it. And the one of the points that I said before is the individual chooses something he wants to get better at, and he actually gets the whole team to coach him to get better at it. So it works at three levels: the individual benefits, the team benefits, and the company benefits, because you've done that difficult job of aligning everybody. And I may not be saying it very well, but I think it's very important, because there is a huge payoff in this. That if you do it right, then everybody benefits. Okay. Feed forward dialogues. You've talked about feed forward before, but maybe you'd like to explain a little bit more about it, because again, feed forward is something everybody talks about, but surprisingly few people, in my view, do.
Yeah.
Because it's obvious when you think about it, but why don't people do it? So over to you, Brad.
Yeah, why don't people do it? I don't have an answer to that. I mean, it's not something that we're taught, but I do think that teaching it solves a lot of problems. Right. So I'll teach it to you now. Let's just rectify that for the number of people in the room. What we notice overwhelmingly about highly successful people is, unsurprising, they like to be in control. Again, if anyone has differing opinion, drop it in the chat. But what they want to do is they want to make the choices. They want to choose what they're spending their time on, because they believe, not only am I successful today, but whatever I choose to work at, I'm going to be successful in the future. Here's the rub. Feedback is about something you have no control over. Feedback is retrospective. Hey, last week you were a jerk. Here's how it affected me. Don't do that again. Feed forward puts the recipient in the driver's seat. Hey, in next week's meeting, I would sure appreciate if before we closed up, if you asked if I had any, final notes. That now lets the recipient choose whether to do it or not. It takes the sting from me away from having to say, you did something wrong, here's judgment. Instead, it's saying, here's how we build a more collaborative, prosperous relationship in a week's time. And this is pretty magical, but the key points are it's future focused. it's going to be positive. Not you did something wrong. Here's something here's something you can do well. And then it leaves you in the driver's seat. You get to choose whether you're going to do something. So feed forward is the way to essentially shortcut feedback and get right into action.
Yeah, you're asking people how you can get better. You're asking people how you can get better in the future, which is actually what you want to know. You don't want to know that you've been terrible. I mean, sorry, it's sort of doesn't do, it sort of doesn't do. What you want is ideas. In fact, this sort of, I think, brings it together to me. You're looking for ideas of what you can improve, how you can improve. It's your choice whether you do them, because you can mend them, but at least you've got a list of things that if you were to choose to invest your time in, you'll get a payoff. And actually, I do this with clients when they're leaving a company. I get them to practice on their old company, look around some of their people. I'm leaving. I want to start my 30-day plan for my new business. My next business. If you were starting a plan and you were moving, what would you put in that 30-day plan? So they're rehearsing it, but it also builds the relationship with people in the old company that they may continue for later. Then when they go in the new company, they find the stakeholders and say, look, I'm developing my 30-day plan. If you were me, what would you put into it?
Yeah. And
it dramatically improves their chance of survival and success in the new company, from my experience.
Yeah. Well, you're taking a test and you're asking the teacher, what's the rubric?
Yes.
How are you going to judge my performance? And they're going to tell you this is the target. And that makes it phenomenally, you can behave with surgical precision when you have this level of insight.
Yeah. And also, the only downside I found is this, which I do warn clients about. Mm-hmm. If you find yourself in an organization where you genuinely ask how you can improve, and people don't help you, get out. Yeah. That sounds a bit hard, but that's the only downside. You realize, because if you're genuine and you want to do better for yourself, the organization, whether you put it, and you ask for people's help for some basic ideas of how you can improve, and they don't know or they're not prepared to tell you, there is something wrong with that organization. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating because you can sort of boss out very quickly. If a boss either doesn't know how you can improve, they're obviously not a very good boss. So I'm going on a side train here, but that's the only downside I found.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it's a very powerful detection mechanism. Yeah. I would call that a strong feature.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to stop somebody from calling. So feed forward thing, the last two, because we're building a system. I like systems. What you're doing is building a system that if you get the system right, it will work. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not a one-off. It's building a system, like going down to the gym regularly. You're building a system. It may be difficult at times, but if you put the effort in, you will improve. And there's almost a certainty in it. To me, there is a certainty in it. It's just like meditation or gym or exercises like that. There is a payoff, but you've got to do it. Mm-hmm. Talking about it and complaining about it does not work. Well, it works, but it doesn't get you.
It feels good.
Get better. So you've got the last two regular follow-up. You have regular follow-up and you have mini surveys, which are confidential surveys. So you know how you're doing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So really what we're saying is if you're an organization, you want to put this in, there is a very well laid out process of things that you need to do. And what would you add? What would you add, Brandon?
I would add anyone can do this anytime for free. If there is a behavior that affects other people that you want to improve, I mean, this is it. You've got nothing to sell. Use this system. It is absolutely mind-blowingly accurate.
You just have to do it. And I'm going to cheekily say, sometimes a coach is useful.
Yes.
Sometimes the coach is useful, one, to explain the bits that you miss. Not the coach knows everything, but sometimes two heads is better than one. Yep. And somebody independent that can very gently say, have you done this bit yet? or how was that bit, that gently keeps you on track, can, as a catalyst, make a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. Anybody can do it,
Mm-hmm.
but as many people don't do it,
Mm-hmm.
having help to do it may help you.
It's exactly what you said about the gym. Everybody knows it is a household piece of knowledge. Eat less, move more. You want to live a healthy life? That's it. I mean, that's like the two biggest things that we miss. The problem isn't knowing what to do, it's doing what you know needs to be done. And that's where the coach can provide a greater degree of certainty over the success. But doing this stuff,
Actually, I like it. A greater degree of certainty. That's really what we're offering, is a greater degree of certainty.
Yep. How serious are you going to take this? Anyone can exercise in their gym, in their home gym, and build a great body, build a great engine for their body, everything. If you want to leave nothing to chance, get yourself a personal trainer. In leadership, if you want to leave nothing to chance, get a coach.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on from that. Let's talk about, because we got 10 minutes to go. Let's talk about some of the benefits of this approach, because we don't talk about the hard work. We've talked about the hard work. What are some of the things people get out of it? So I'm going to go through this and just chip in what you think. Firstly, sure. Stakeholder engagement. Stakeholders actually know what's going on because they're involved. They know what's going on, so they become much more involved in the whole business and support what you're doing. You add something about the importance of stakeholders in there.
I think, within this angle, the biggest outcome is that people are talking. No, let me change that. People are already talking. The engagement piece is that they're talking to each other. And I don't think I need to add any benefits on top of that. But when you have an organization where feedback is tight and fast and open and empowering, you can imagine the downstream impact. So this is the level of engagement that this produces.
Okay. Next one is that you do actually get behavioral change. And from my point of view, especially as an NLP guy, you can do it from the inside, but having the outside support your behavioral change and give you feedback is a tremendous boost. It's much easier to do it if the system is with you, as opposed to trying to do it on your own and everybody else is doing the reverse. Mm-hmm. And anything you want to add?
Agreed. Leadership is what happens with people, and there's a lot of precursors to how you're able to show. I think where you and I are always further aligning on this. What's happening on your inside before you go into a leadership moment is let's say the moderator over how effective you'll be as a leader. So this puts the outside bit on autopilot.
So puts the outside bit, and you actually need. I'm going to argue you need both. But without the outside bit, it's very difficult. And what we're providing is the support and the system, and so the outside bit is supporting you. And that's another thing I like about Marshall's processes. Basically, the process is predicated. You get your stakeholders to support you. And you're almost creating your positive environment, your positive community. So even if you have a community that's a bit funny, you're actually molding the community to help you grow.
Yeah. And
I think that's so important. And it's not something people think about. Mm-hmm. So okay. Goal setting and accountability. Clear goals are set. I rebel against the word goals, but that's another question. Clear goals are set, and stakeholder involvement adds the layer of accountability. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like exercise. You have to lean into the stuff that's tough.
Yep. You got to weigh yourself every morning. It's never perfect, but it's reliable. Same thing with stakeholders who are expecting that you're going to ask them. You build mechanisms internally that become perpetual sources of tight feedback.
Yeah. Okay. We've talked about feedback and feed forward. Again, I love this. Because the process gets you to do it, it forces you to learn how to do it and improve. Mm-hmm. And it's like it's a theoretical concept. Feedback and feed forward is nice, but it doesn't do anything. You actually have to do it. But if you set up a system that almost forces you to do it, it's as I said before, you cannot not learn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But without that system, it's actually quite hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, feedback and feed forward, for my technologists and engineers out there, you understand feedback and feed forward is just data. The system that enforces you do it is the accountability that comes on the other side. Feedback is a one-time event. Feedback systems is the accountability that keeps you to do it. The feed forward feedback is just the data. The accountability is what drives action.
Yeah, I like that. Mutual responsibility, it encourages people to work together.
Yeah.
As opposed to fight their silos and their corner, you're actually encouraging to work better as a team to help each other, which is the reason that I do actually think it's potentially a culture change. It's not sold as that, but it actually changes culture if people want to do it. And again, next one, cultural awareness. Do you want to say a few words about that?
Yeah, I think there's two aspects to this, and one is organizational culture and one is diversity of individual culture.
Yeah.
In reverse order, when you are working with a team of, let's say, 12 different nationalities and 6 different religions, and every single person has a very unique personality, you have so many variables to consider, to factor in, and the chances you make everybody happy all the time, not only is that slim, but the chances that you maximize, satisfaction by accident, it's non-existent. It's as close to zero as you can get. Stakeholder-centered coaching creates cultural awareness by getting the input from what everyone's seeing, thinking, and their points of view. And the other aspect is, let's say, organizational cultural programming. As a leader, sharing feed forward focused on the cultural pillars of the organization is getting that real-time programming of people towards the organizational expectations of behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. The next point I want to get onto before we summarize is to say, for better or worse, I'm working with a number of clients that are involved in AI, either themselves or putting it in companies or whatever. And it becomes obvious to me anyway, that the current way people are working together needs to change. That this was a nice to have. You could get away with some pretty terrible stuff and your company would still survive. I think with AI is, if organizations really want to get a return from AI, they need honest communication, they need much better decision making, etc., etc. And I think this is a process that would genuinely help them get there. But my view is a lot of this stuff, a lot of the stuff about teams is nice to read about, and a lot of companies just bulldoze their way through it. But I'm not sure that will work in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what are you doing as a coach to help organizations implement AI?
Well, a bit of this stuff, but I'm getting them to think through what the implications are. So let me you've thrown a big question at me that I don't yet have a slick answer to. So I will say, be a sounding board, but genuinely get them back to do what are the. Actually, you've just asked a really important question, which I'm going to come at a different way. In the world now, what are the key success skills people need to develop in order to thrive? And actually, because AI will change, because it used to be the expert, I'm using the wrong words, but it used to be the guy with a certain amount of knowledge protected their knowledge and sold it, and that's how they kept safe. Different people will get to the top, in my view. And how do I say this? It's useful going back to what are the capabilities? Yeah, what are the capabilities to thrive in the next stage? And developing your networks to some extent always was important, but it becomes more important. And so it's actually looking at it's reminding people there is a big picture here, and thinking about, if you want to survive and thrive in the future, what are the things it's worth investing your time in? And AI, in my view, is not going to go away. It's going to be implemented well or terribly, mostly terribly, because as always, it's being sold as a miracle cure. But unfortunately, it isn't the miracle cure. The miracle cure are the poor people that implement it and find the right way of implementing it. And my view is helping people come aware that this is the chessboard, whatever the right word is, this is the chessboard they're now going to play in, I think is a way to help them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want me to say too much about this. It's a fascinating topic, how coaching will change,
Mm-hmm.
and how jobs will change, and how the C-suite will change.
It's hugely fascinating, and to your credit, Michael, you are the person who's taught me more about AI than anyone else. You're the person who, broke that seal for me to actually get me swimming around in it. So I don't have anything to say because I'm eager to learn from you.
Well, to me, when I was very young, I was lucky enough to be involved in a huge change project. Okay? And to some extent, change projects are still change projects. And if you're changing a company, it is not easy. And it's the old joke. Everybody knows what to do, and they don't do it, but they've got away with it up to now. The catch is, my view with this stuff, if you really want to benefit, you got to actually do what you need to do. I know that sounds terribly, whatever the word is, but I am quite passionate about it. Mm-hmm. You won't be able to get away with some of the things people got away with before. And why I like Marshall's stuff is, it is one way of getting there. Which is, we've timed it perfectly. It's 5 o'clock, so we spent an hour. So, Brandon, would you remind people of your contact details? I'm going to send notes out of this. In fact, even if you look at the LinkedIn Live thing, you've got some notes which goes through the core of what we've been talking about, and it has Brandon's contact details and my contact details. But Brandon, would you like your last thoughts?
I would say first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for being interested in this topic. This is important stuff. And if you're a professional coach, what we've shared here should do two things. One, it should motivate you to say, I can do something about this, and I will do something about this. Number two is, it should terrify you. This is the alarm signals. This is the code red alert. Like, let's get on the ball and do something about this. For those of you that want to know more about the methodology we just described, drop me an email, brandon@mgscc.net, for Marshall Goldsmith Stakeholder Center Coaching, mgscc.net. I've been teaching a 2-hour masterclass, and I have to suppose we've got a recording somewhere we can send you. Drop me an email there, or connect with me on LinkedIn. It's the best way to stay in touch and follow what it is that we're doing. You'll find out more of these events that Michael's hosting that I get to have the joy to come around and do a few times a year. So don't be a stranger, be my guest, connect soon, and we'll see you at another event.
And obviously, thank anybody that's still there listening. Thank you very much. Anybody that's listening to the recording, it's your attention that's important. Thanks a lot. I'm going to say goodbye, and until next time.